Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, first of all, to the organizers for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. Today, I'm José Valls. I'm a policy officer in the Food Systems and Food Safety Division in FAO, in headquarters in Rome. And I'm basically working on different programs in support of food system transformation processes at country level, but also at regional level, specifically in the Mediterranean region, and also at global level through different partnerships like the Sustainable Food Systems Program of the One Planet Network, but also supporting the UN Food Systems Coordination Hub that was created a couple of years ago and is based in Rome as well. So again, a pleasure to be here today with you to discuss this crucial topic and also very challenging topic of policy coherence for agri-food systems transformation. So, first of all, let me start with some definitions, and of course, we are all very familiar with the concept of food systems or agri-food systems, which for us is the journey of food from farm to table, including when it's grown, harvested, processed, packaged, transported, distributed, traded, bought, prepared, eaten, and disposed of. This includes also all the drivers that condition these activities, but also the multiple outcomes of all these activities. So, just to say how this definition frames already the complexity of the agri-food systems and the different levels of interconnectedness that are within the system. Also, about the terminology, food systems, agri-food systems is used very often interchangeably. We in FAO are using the term agri-food systems to include pre-farm activities, services, inputs, etc., but especially also non-food products that, like for example, forestry or biofuels or fibers, that are a fundamental piece of the incomes of farmers and of the livelihoods of food system stakeholders. That's why it's very important that the livelihoods are taken as part of the agri-food system. What is a sustainable agri-food system? So it's a system basically that achieves coherent co-benefits across all the sustainability dimensions. So first, delivering food security and healthy diets to a growing population. Also producing equitable benefits, social benefits, but also economic benefits. And this while managing environmental impacts. So a sustainable agri-food system is the one that has all these outcomes, but at the same time that does not compromise the basis to generate these outcomes for future generations. There are several trends and mega trends that are conditioning and driving the agri-food system. So I will not go into details. There is also these are very much documented also in literature, and we are familiar with most of these trends. I just wanted to recap that this complexity of the agri-food system is even more complex with all these drivers that are placing pressures in the already complex agri-food systems. And also the fact that the impact is usually, even if there are global aspects, global trends at global level, and they happen at global level, they are especially impacting small producers, farmers in developing countries the most. We know that there are many challenges around the agri-food systems, but also agri-food systems are actually providing an opportunity because they can provide solutions to different major global challenges. So not just food security and nutrition, which is maybe the obvious one, but also climate change and biodiversity loss. We know that up to 1/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions produced worldwide come from the agri-food systems. Also 80% of the land use change is due to agriculture activities, which has an effect on biodiversity losses. So there is a potential really in reversing that situation and impacting other outcomes. Also, It can provide solutions to rural poverty. We know that Agrifood Systems is one of the biggest employers in the world. It employs 1.2 billion people around the world, and it also creates or the livelihoods of almost 4 billion people, so half the population of the world, are depending on Agrifood Systems. So this just gives an idea of the transformative power of food and agri-food systems, and how focusing on food systems in reality is looking and can help achieve all the SDGs. So not just the usual suspects, let's say, on SDG 2 or some of the environment ones, or SDG 12, but really cutting across education, across decent work, across sustainable cities, gender equality, even peace, and all the SDGs. So this is also part of the reasons why agri-food system transformation has been recognized in the Global Sustainable Development Report, which is a report made by scientists to establish the status of sustainable development in the world. It was recognized by this report as one of the key accelerators and one of the entry points to sustainable development. This has translated now into a strategy that the UN is putting in place, where there are 6 transitions that have been identified for transformative and systemic impact. Food systems is one of them. The others are energy, digital connectivity, jobs, social protection, education, climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. So each of these entry points or transformative entry points require multiple levers across the 3 dimensions of sustainability: social, economic, and environmental. But at the same time, they are really interconnected among themselves. So it's very important that we look at, when we look at systems and agri-food systems, we are also looking at the other systems. So the systems thinking is really at a higher level. And you can see here all the links between food systems and energy and digital connectivity, jobs, as we have been saying before, and the 6 of them. So agri-food system transformation, what do we mean really with transformation? In reality, transformation has been happening for decades already, with positive effects, also negative effects. So what we mean now with transformation is a systemic change. We are looking at a change of the whole system that can take into account all the elements of the agri-food systems that I was mentioning before, on the drivers, also the functioning of the system itself, but also the multiple outcomes of the system, but also taking into account all the people or the stakeholders that are part of the system, because very often challenges are sometimes determined by diverse interests, by diverse levels of power, and therefore it's very important to take into account also the relationship among the stakeholders, and to go towards collective action instead of working in more separately or in silos. So basically, what the food system transformation concept is meaning is needing is a lot of innovation. Because it means thinking differently. It means acting differently. It means working across the system differently, with a different mindset, with a different mental model even. So it's critical to work also and to consider this change of mindset when we are working towards transformation. And this is why also a systems approach is critical. Such systems approaches have been actually recognized quite widely during the UN Food System Summit process that was mentioned in the previous presentation. The Food System Summit happened in 2021, but there has been a follow-up process. There was the last Food System Summit +2 in July this year. And maybe it's one of the first times where this need of addressing the interconnection across the system and the interconnection of the multiple outcomes of the agri-food systems has been put to a so high level and actually recognized by everyone, stakeholders, countries, and in a way endorsed also by all of them. So in particular at country level, There were several dialogues that were mostly multi-stakeholder dialogues to think through these agri-food systems. What are the agri-food systems we have? What are the agri-food systems we want? What do we need to do about it? And these resulted in the food systems transformation pathways or strategies. They take different forms in different countries, but they are basically a starting point to address those challenges by looking at what the country visions in terms of agri-food system. What does a transformation means for us, and how do we move there? Of course, this is a lengthy process, and now countries are starting to look at how to implement these pathways, how to implement these strategies that in many cases had this systemic approach, but then implementing it is another story. And as I was saying, it's a lot about mindset shifting at individual level, but also at institutional level for countries, as it was said before, about the attitudes, etc. So it takes time. It's not automatic. Many of these pathways actually reflected very concrete entry points for food systems transformation, and this is a good practice, let's say, in systems thinking to identify the leverage points that would help bring about transformation in a rapid way. There are some examples here, but what I wanted to also mention is that these very concrete entry points are there. What we don't necessarily have, and the pathways and the strategies don't necessarily have, is how do they fit together? No, how are they interconnected? How are they sometimes undermining each other, and therefore how can they fit in a coherent way? And this is where we come into policy coherence, actually, which is the topic of the workshop. And actually, policy coherence is a way of applying a food systems approach in practice, addressing conflicts and trade-offs among these different outcomes, among stakeholders' interests, among levels of governance, even by recognizing that different dimensions of the agri-food systems are interconnected. So really looking at it as a system. You have one of the definitions there. The important thing I wanted to highlight is that the aim is to ensure in this definition that policies designed to improve one food system outcome do not undermine others. So the do not harm principles as a first step, so that policies do not work against each other. But then we could add actually possible synergies or possible co-benefits. So how also we ensure that policies are mutually supportive. I will move. We have also, of course, there are different dimensions when we look at policy coherence within an integrated agenda. I will go very quickly because also I understand this is part of what we will be discussing today. But there is the horizontal coherence, which is looking at addressing sectoral silos. So, for example, national agriculture policies with environmental policies, with trade policies, with climate policies, with energy policies, with investment at country level. So how these are coherent and do not undermine each other, but also are mutually supportive. Then there is another way of horizontal coherence, which is often called international coherence, that is looking at how policies of different countries are being coherent among each other. For example, looking at higher level goals or global challenges. Then we have the vertical coherence, which is basically looking at different levels of governance. So how a national agriculture development policy is coherent with an international trade policy, for example, but also at local level, subnational level, how local programs on let's say addressing malnutrition are coherent with the national policies of that country in tackling malnutrition or obesity, overweight. So it's very important also this vertical coherence aspect, so that the fact that the different levels of governance have policies that are not just not contradictory, but also that are mutually supportive, so that we can gain also in efficiencies. There is also a dimension on time, coherence, so which obviously is looking at how to develop the food systems of today, thinking about the food systems of tomorrow already, no? And this is where also foresight and science is really important. So how to consider the policies that would increase, for example, productivity to support the current well-being of population, thinking about the future policies that would have to support the well-being of future generations in maybe a different context, for example, of more degraded natural resources or worse climate change context and effects. So here are some elements that we would need to consider when looking at achieving coherence, or at least at enabling coherence, because I saw in the agenda also that one of the questions is it coherence achievable actually? But so at least can we enable it or get towards this policy coherence? These elements come from experience. They are also reflected in literature, and they are also part actually of the SDG 1714 indicator, which looks at measuring the policy coherence for sustainable development. And this is very can be applied actually to agri-food systems. So the first aspect is the institutionalization of political commitment at the highest level. This is, for example, what we were saying before about the national pathways are a way of institutionalizing this commitment to food systems transformation and elaborating how we want to do it. So this is one important step. Of course, it's not sufficient, but it's a necessary one. Also, to have long-term considerations when in decision making. This relates to what I was saying before, and we have seen this especially more and more with the recent shocks and crises, like in COVID-19, with the climate-related events, the Ukraine crisis. How it's so important to look at the long-term outcomes and not just focus on the short-term policy goals. Another element is that we need is interministerial and cross-sectoral coordination. This relates to the horizontal coherence that I was mentioning. And what we see is that often there is very limited collaboration among different entities, different ministries at government level. We were discussing also even at regional level, but also at global level, of course. So how to have the right mechanisms to engage that collaboration to make sure that there is a genuine cross-sectoral coordination. There are countries that are establishing coordination mechanisms, but for them to function, they have to have a clear mandate. They have to be, they have to have legitimacy also. They have to have resources to operate, and they have to apply this systems thinking and this mindset change at institutional level, which is still being a challenge. We have examples, for example, in Ireland, there is a coordination mechanism on agri-food systems that looks at developing the agri-food systems strategies for the country, which includes different stakeholders, so public, private, also academia. But they are linked to the Ministry of Agriculture, which sometimes could be a limitation. In other countries, for example, in Uganda, they are establishing. They established 2 years ago a high-level committee on agri-food system transformation, but at the level of the Office of the Prime Minister, which gives another perspective and allows also to look at really all the different ministries and to have also a kind of enforcement capacity for the other ministries. So there are different examples. Sorry. Participation is also fundamental, and we have examples. For example, at local level, there are many cities that have established the food policy councils that include different stakeholders from the community in thinking through aspects on food systems from the demand side, but also from the supply side. At national level, also, as I was giving the example of Ireland, where they have this mechanism on public-private consultation for developing what they have now as the Ireland's Foodwise 2025. So it's the agricultural development strategy, and the private sector involvement is quite important in that. And the country has established the mechanisms that to allow that, and also to engage with civil society like consumers, etc. Another important aspect is, of course, the policy linkages. So how to integrate the different dimensions of agri-food systems, how to establish the right incentives for that, the right disincentives also, and how evidence is important. How evidence is important for this, no? And to ensure the assessment of the co-benefits of the trade-offs, as we were hearing also before. With a scientific basis and with an evidence base that is absolutely necessary, but of course not sufficient for driving the changes. Another aspect is the alignment across government levels. So this refers to the vertical coherence that I was talking about before, and it also needs specific mechanisms for consultation. This is in some countries it's starting to emerge, but it's still very often missing, especially from city level to a connection to the national policies through an actual mechanism of consultation that allows to discuss and to make sure that this coherence is reached is still missing. We are working a lot through the Food System Summit follow-up process. There is a whole coalition on urban food systems that looks precisely at that, at how to link cities' policies and programs and action to national pathways, for example, or national strategies that look at the same goals. Another very important aspect, of course, is monitoring and reporting for policy coherence. So having very clear M&E frameworks, very clear targets, very clear indicators and milestones on what is the transformation we want and how we are getting there, and if we are not getting there, how to redress the situation. This is also very important for accountability of actors and different stakeholders. Very often the responsibilities within the policy, the implementation of policies and action is not necessarily very clear, and this is something that the M&E frameworks with clear responsibilities would also help in terms of accountability, and some countries are exploring some of these mechanisms. Another one, of course, is the financial resources. They need not just to be there and available for food system transformation, but they need to be allocated in a way that reflects the coherence. So in many cases, they are allocated sectorally, and this may not be bad necessarily, and it may not change actually. They will continue to be allocated sectorally, but how do we make a link between these sectoral allocations and higher goals and higher outcomes that these resources are supposed to achieve? This is something that is often still missing. And another point that I don't have in the slide, but that is also of utmost importance, is human capacities. Because, as I was saying before, it's this system thinking, this starting to connect the different pieces, the different actors, is very much about a mindset, very much influenced by the perceptions of the different actors and the different where each stakeholders comes from. So it's very important to raise also the awareness and the capacities of all to enable this coherence, no? And here learning is fundamental. Learning meaning especially learning from each other. It was said also before, and it's learning from each other because there is no one, let's say. Silver bullet or solution. Nobody holds the solution. Nobody can teach others. So it's really about how to create the spaces for collective learning and move from there. I think one of the most important aspects also is actually to consider the context specificity. So all these elements that we are talking about and all the drivers, and they will depend a lot on the context, and it's not something you can, as I was saying, it's not a blueprint or a silver bullet that you can just apply as a guide or as a checklist. It's each country and each group of stakeholders has really needs to find their way in this coherence on agri-food systems, and they have to build on where they are already. They have to build on what they have already, and from there find what are the best ways according to the context of the country, the context of the different stakeholders, etc. So again, very important to create these spaces to co-create these policy solutions together with the different stakeholders. I'm finishing. Sorry for the length. Just this very quickly. It's one of the examples of the approaches we are using to do this. So to establish these co-creation processes through multi-stakeholder collaboration. And this, I won't go much in detail, but there is this guide that was produced earlier this year with UNEP and with UNDP on how to actually look at all these different elements that I was saying before in engaging in this multi-stakeholder collaboration for enabling the policy coherence. Of course, multi-stakeholder collaboration is also something that is necessary, but definitely not sufficient in itself, but just wanted to put it as an example. And then I will finish here with the key highlights. I won't go, because I think I don't know how I'm doing with time, but okay, so I will leave it there, I will leave them